Hello and welcome to Macstaff Live today. Whether you're joining us on LinkedIn or YouTube, you are very welcome. Before the general election, I sat down with recruitment industry experts Anthony McCormack, Sarah Bishop and Mark Hopkins to discuss what the general election might mean for the country and recruitment. The results of that video led to the best viewed Macstaff Live video of all time. So I'd like to say, backed by popular demand, are the same three guests for a post-election chat where we can review exactly what happened and whether any of the prophecies came true. Thank you very much for joining us here on Macstaff Live, and a big greeting to all our guests today. MD of Macstaff, Anthony McCormack, hi.
Hi, morning, Martin, and thanks. Need no introduction really, but friends of the show, like Sarah Bishop from Recruit and Mark Hopkins from Thomas Lee. Let's get it on.
Let's get it on. If you're watching us today and you have any questions throughout the broadcast, please feel free to leave a comment and we'll try and answer them before we go away today. Let's crack on. A brief initial thoughts of the result, everybody, first. It was obviously a big Labour landslide. I've just quickly clicked that graphic on just to remind people just exactly how big a landslide it was, how big a drop the Tories suffered in terms of seats can be shown in that one as well. So, Anthony, let's start with you. How did you see it all, and what were your initial reactions on the Friday morning when the results were coming in?
Yeah, when after the beginning of the 10 o'clock news, it's like, wow, yeah, it really is that landslide that we talked about. So yeah, the country wasn't bluffing in the guard changes, and I don't know, I'm pretty at peace with it, really. It's it was a good campaign. Kier's reformed the party, he's like put an agenda for change forward. They ran a pretty decent campaign, and yeah, it's like clear cut, isn't it? That there's a mandate, and like hopefully they can go on and deliver the things that people want. So yeah, okay from my point of view.
Yeah, Bish.
I think I'm like a lot of the nation, just a little bit relieved, to be honest with you, which is not something even 5 or 6 years ago you would have heard me saying if I thought a Labour government was going to get in. So, yeah, I think just a bit of relief, a sigh of relief that we need change. We're kind of almost wherever it comes. I think we're almost in a little pool of desperation, aren't we? It's like, yeah, under new management, everyone's like, thank God, even if we're not sure whether they're going to be any cop or not, everyone's just relieved that there's somebody new in, I think.
Yeah. Mark, you're nodding away there. Agree with Sarah?
Yeah, definitely. When the exit poll came out, I went to bed. I just thought, it's done. All right, I'm off to bed now.
Did you sleep any better that night? In the last 14 years? Was that your best night in 14 years?
Probably the best night's sleep. No, it was when I saw the exit poll, I went, right, this is pretty much what it's going to look like now. It's not going to change much. There's not going to be big surprises. And when I was seeing that Reform had about 13, I kind of went probably more near 4 or 5, but it did turn out to be 4 or 5. The biggest surprise to me was that there was over 100 Tory seats won, and there was more than I thought for Lib Dems. So Lib Dems, out of them all, really, we got to look at them and think they've done really, really well to get really what they've got. Also, like we were saying earlier on, Anthony, about Plaid got 4 as well, which is, again, another great thing for Wales. And the SNP, Jesus Christ, they need to do some soul searching on what they want to do moving forward. But we all know that Labour's won to a point of which the Tories lost more than anything. But I think the Tories lost probably about 3 years ago, probably when Liz Truss's budget came out. That's when the Tories lost this election. Yeah. Nothing changed since then. The polls were exactly where we kind of ended up. And I'm sure we're going to talk about reform later on. That hasn't shocked me, and I'll tell you why later on. That hasn't shocked me.
Okay. But while you're on, Mark, you talk about the success of the Lib Dems then. The next bit I'd like to touch on is the sort of tone and the content of the build up to the election. So what did they do right that meant that they got the results that we're all sitting back sort of quite surprised by? What did they do right?
I think they cleverly positioned themselves in key areas of the UK. They didn't spread themselves thin like Reform did. They focused cleverly in these areas that they knew that Tories were going to lose. there wasn't an electoral pact with Labour, but there were many places within the UK where Labour kind of pulled back a little bit and let the Lib Dems get on with it, and Lib Dems did the same thing as well. So there was no electoral pact. There was just an understanding, well, you're probably going to win this, so we're not going to bother. So I think it was just very clever stuff. Ed Davey, I think, has changed a lot in the last 10 years. I never liked him when he was in the coalition government. I thought he was a bit swarmy, but I think he's changed a lot, and I've grown to like him. I didn't vote Lib Dems, by the way, but I've grown to like and appreciate kind of what they bring. And it's nice to have almost a kind of that centre-left party now that has some alternatives to what Labour could produce to probably keep Labour in check. I don't think the Tories are going to be a very effective opposition at this moment in time. I think they're in quite a flat spin. So yeah, it's interesting to see. And yeah, like I say, their popularity is the fact being a better vote than Labour in these key areas to take Tory votes, basically.
And Anthony is a sort of a centre-rightist. I'm sort of surmising your political thoughts there in a couple of words. Did you warm to the same things that Mark warmed to throughout that Lib Dem campaign?
Yeah, I did. I did like some of their campaign actually, and yeah, maybe I'm centre right. Not sure. I think I'm like a lot of voters in that. We're prepared to kind of look at the situation as of now and vote like with whatever feels right or seems best, irrespective of like family or voting background and whatnot. So I didn't like the silliness like from Ed Davey. Kind of thought that cheapened the kind of the policies really, but then again, like still talking about it now, so the memorable thing worked. I really liked Daisy Cooper actually. I thought she had a lot of good things to say and in the right way, and I think they played the human card, like they were relatable. They talked about things other than politics, family and people's other priorities and things like that. So yeah, I think they related well. Kier was criticised a little bit for being a bit of a puppet, and a plastic man, and do we really know him? But it was businesslike, like it was effective, and Rishi, it just kind of got a little bit cringeworthy because he's just not relatable, was he? He obviously took it as a presidential type campaign, said, "Don't worry, I've got this," and it was just off. Like it didn't capture the trust of the voters, did it?
Yeah, that's an interesting point actually. Sarah, talking about Kier Starmer, it was a very business-like performance as Ant described there. Is that what this country needed, and is that why people related to it? I know in part one, Mark spoke about a spell of boringness that's about to come up, hopefully, to give us all some stability. People criticised Kier Starmer for being boring during the campaign. Should he have been more lively, or did you agree with the way he approached it?
I think at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not like a huge fan, to be honest with you, but I do think there is a certain element of the country does need, business. I mean, we've had like, the buffoon from hell, haven't we, that opened the Conservative tenure more recently. And I think he's, despite the criticism, has just continued to be genuinely who he is. And I think we do need that authenticity. I think that's something that is super missing in UK politics at the moment. We seem to have been driven more and more towards populist activities. You've mentioned it already, Mark, the showings that Reform got, they're very much a populist. The previous incumbents, that was very much on a populist vote, whether that was, it's stuff that sounded good. The rhetoric sounded good, didn't it? Even though the truth is quite often counterintuitive. So I think it's probably what we do need in terms of campaigning overall. I was quite disappointed, not across the board. I mean, if you looked at like the Twitter or X feed, I mean, does anybody actually even call it X anymore?
I don't think so.
But
I don't think so.
If you look at the feed, like particularly on the Conservative thing, it actually shocked me to the core. I mean, I'm almost speechless, and you guys know how hard that's like to do, isn't it? Stop me speaking. But I was like this is like borderline authoritarian propaganda, and as you went through it, I could not. I was really hard pushed to find any sound bites or posts that would say, we're going to do this. This is our solution to this. It was all, you can't trust with the Labour, they're going to come and eat your babies at night kind of thing. You know, I mean, it was absolutely ludicrous.
Don't forget, the Russians were going to invade a 601 on a Friday afternoon, weren't they?
The Russians, I mean, bearing in mind, we had a prime minister who I'm fairly sure is like the Cambridge Sixth, you know, if you're in the 50s and 60s, we had the Cambridge Five, didn't we? Who were found to be Russian spies. And I know that Johnson was very much in thrall of a lot of the people there. But anyway, so, yeah, and it just seemed ridiculous, you know, that banging on about taxes and how we'd be taxed more. And it's like... The
mythical 2000 figure as well was repeated a lot, wasn't it?
We have record taxation at the moment. And they're saying you can't vote Labour because you're going to be taxed more. I just found it
the scare tactics and the negative campaigning didn't play well, did it? It's just it just came across as desperate, which obviously they were.
Yeah, and I don't think it sat well with even some quite, you know, dyed-in-the-wool conservative voters. I think that the decent people that genuinely believe in, you know, democracy and fair play and all the things that, you know, a lot of people purport to believe, could see that, you know, that just wasn't really cricket, was it? It wasn't very British. It wasn't terribly statesmanlike, and it was. I just think it was appalling, and I do think that campaigning probably also lost them quite a few votes.
Can I just move over to Anthony on that point, Sarah? And do you think that sort of campaigning damaged the brand so much that I saw an ex-Conservative politician on television last night saying that they should disband the party now? There's just no way forward for them. Has it damaged the brand so much that is a possibility going forward now, or is there a way back based on the point Sarah was talking about and their campaigning?
I don't think so. I think actually people have got kind of pretty short memories, and they'll be able to bounce back. It's a bad situation, but I've heard people, you know, saying it's not the extinction event that was feared. You know, they've still got like 120 seats or whatever, and if they take their time, would probably be a good idea in electing a new leader. But I don't like who's already waiting in the wings, and the jockeying for position is just yet more of the kind of the selfishness and, like, what did you call it? The psychodrama, you know, soap opera of the party continuing. But no, I think it's like, you know, look across 100 years, it's the most successful political party, isn't it? And just needs, you know, to rise again from the ashes, I guess. Yeah.
Mark, what important issues were there to people in your area where you live in the West Midlands, and also your home country of Wales? What issues stood out?
Potholes. No, I don't.
I didn't see that in anyone's manifesto.
No one had it.
It is in the Labour manifesto.
Is it? Okay.
It actually is. It's as part of their economic growth project. But yeah, so it is.
Make the road smoother. Do you know what? In this particular area, in the Tamworth area, what I kind of got from a lot of the literature that was sent, not so much the conversation I was having, was this focus on better social housing, better kind of the town centre itself as well is so run down. Even though it's had 21 million of this levelling up fund, all we see right now is just buildings that have been taken down. That's it. That's as far as they've got. And that's had 5-6 years since Johnson mentioned it. So there hasn't really been that much movement forward in that kind of area. And that's all most people in this area seem to be worried about, was literally potholes, social housing, and what's going on with the town centre. Oh, and getting doctor's appointments, but that was a national issue. In Wales, there was a bit of a push and pull in Wales, I found. It was definitely get the Tories out, because they felt that the Tories were doing what they said they were supposed to be doing in certain areas of Wales, especially my kind of hometown in Carmarthen, which used to be called Carmarthen West, which is now Plaid. I think the core vote of that area was mostly to deal with Brexit. And it's a very similar situation to the last election that was won in this area. It was mostly to deal with Brexit. I think hadn't Brexit had been in play, I don't think that Tories would have won any of those seats in Wales. I think it would be what it looks like today. Now that Brexit's almost in the long grass and we may be coming back to it soon, I can see that people have had enough with it and it's now back to normal. So we're not looking at the Tory psychodrama of going round in circles with populism and Brexit all the time.
Yeah, okay. Sarah, it's not by complete chance to ask you an inflammatory question, but did any individuals distinguish or disgrace themselves during the campaigning for you?
There's probably too many to list, aren't there? And I would love to be able to.
On which side?
Yeah, I would love to be able to say, "Ooh, so and so very much distinguished." Distinguished. To be honest with you, I kind of pulled back a little bit from watching any of the campaigning and looking. I had a brief dip in because I just found it all so terribly fucking depressing, quite frankly, and two, this was their sales pitch for every party right across the board, isn't it? It's their sales pitch. So I decided to take a little bit of time to come back and go through all the manifesto. I say promises because obviously we've also had quite a lot of history of things being said and not being delivered. But I thought I'll go back to the manifestos actually and dig deeper into those, primarily because it's one of the things that I bitch loudest about is people going out and voting and they actually haven't got a clue what they're fucking doing. So, because they just go, oh, I've supported. People treat their political party like it's a bloody football team. Do you know what I mean? But that's what I feel like. No matter what, they can be as shit as they like, but I'm still going to be Accrington Stanley to the core. I will never, ever cheer Manchester United on. And it's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Ask an unqualified person, get an unqualified answer there, isn't it? That's the election.
Yeah, and it's like, it just amazes me. And I put my hands up. I was one of these, I can remember being like 18 years old, my first opportunity to vote. I may have said this in the last time that we spoke. I can't remember if I did. And I was just getting ready to come to Wolverhampton from London to university to do environmental science. So I was like, yeah, you'll save the planet, I'm going to save the elephants and all this stuff. So naturally I was like, right, I'm going to go and vote Green. I mean, this is in the early 90s. And my dad he went, who are you voting for today then, face ache? And I was like, Green, I'm going to vote Green. And he just said, this is all he said. He went, oh, their economic policy doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And I went, because he's my dad and my hero and was actually a pretty clever bloke, I went, oh, who should I vote for then? And he literally went, he was a small business owner, he had a car yard, vote Tory. And that was it. That was basically it. And I largely didn't really look into, and I'm not alone in this, I'm sure there's a lot of people who kind of just grow up in houses. The one thing I will say for my dad, we had a guy, Bernard Dix, who was a very, very famous trade unionist who lived on our estate. I grew up on a really dodgy council estate in London, and Bernard Dix was this, he was very socialist, huge trade unionist, wrote loads of papers, great guy. And there's two people that my dad would often be found in the kitchen having discussions with. And one was Bernard Dix, who was like his political opposite. They would sit smoking and drinking coffee. They would have discussions all day. And the other person I quite often found in our kitchen with my dad was the parish priest. And my dad was an atheist. So my dad was, and he'd have theological debates all day long as well. So my dad was actually very open to other ideas. But also, he felt, I mean, he's long dead now. My dad's like, I wish I could go, oh, bloody hell. Guess what I found out that you didn't know? My dad, as much as I was very drawn into this trickle-down economics, and low taxation environments. And it's mythical. It's absolutely mythical. And I've got to say that for so many years, they've done a really good job in convincing us otherwise. A really good job. But when you look at all the studies, the sociological studies, it's completely proven and debunked. So we need to go, look, everybody needs to understand this. We need to all become politically, economically better educated and start with asking ourselves the right questions. Yes. Why am I putting my ex in this box? Why do I feel that they're the right people? And if we're just sort of piecemeal spouting out, oh, you think this lot of bad, Labour will be 10 times worse, I'll never vote for them. So it's like, what? So even if they turned around and said they'd found the cure for cancer, pure free green energy forever, and complete zero unemployment, you'll still never vote for them. And there will be some people out there who go, yeah, I'll never vote for them.
Yeah, and Carla Denny for Greens is in Bristol, my home city as well. So yeah,
it's astonishing how many people. Sorry, go on, Sarah. Go on.
Sorry, I vote in Wales now because I'm registered in Wales. So I've actually voted Plaid Cymru. I can't even pronounce it properly. So
very good.
Yay, there we go.
That's please, Mark, an ally there. I'm just going to say, it's astonished me how many people that I know would vote on solely one issue. So that's a really, really good point you made there, Sarah, about we as the general public need to get better educated across a broader range of issues. And go on, Mike, you going to say something there?
I could back it up with evidence, which I was going to mention about reform earlier on. So in 2010, UKIP had 3.9 million votes. In 2015, UKIP Brexit Party had 3.9 million votes. This last election had just over 4 million votes. So the landscape for that kind of group of people, that cross-section of society that are voting for them, is the same. It hasn't changed in 15 years. So we'll always have 15% of people that will just consistently vote for that type of politics, that populist politics. And this is where basically the Tories failed, was the lurch towards that level of politics and leaving the centre ground to then lurch right to basically fight Farage on his own turf, which is why they lost this election.
I think Armando Iannucci had a very good quote recently, which started with, it was something like, the far right aren't growing stronger, they're just louder.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it. And like you say, the statistics do kind of, bear it out.
We're not becoming more fascist, or we're not becoming more totalitarian or more racist. We've still got the same rump that is doing there. But they are very loud. They, in fact, some of there was one guy on TikTok quite recently. He's looking into a couple of the reform candidates and discovered one of them doesn't actually exist. It was an AI, and and people voted for it. Yeah. And these are the little things. There was one that was investigating his local candidate. There was no pictures of her. It was up in Scotland, Helen something her name is. There was no pictures of her. He couldn't find any evidence where she comes from. There's no background on her. She just appeared on the ballot paper and has these leaflets coming through without any pictures of her on the ballot paper. It's quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary.
And the thing is,
incredible, isn't it?
Some of the things that make landslides seem not like a landslide as well, though, and just throwing a little bit of a hand grenade in. It's 80% of people didn't vote for Kier and for Labour. If you include the people who didn't vote at all and the people who voted for other parties, and the right vote was split, wasn't it? But the Conservatives and Reforms combined total votes, that was more than Labour as well, and the 4 million votes roughly that we were saying for Reform, isn't it? That got them 5 seats, didn't it? It's roughly the same 4 million votes got the Lib Dems 70 seats. There's a lot of things
it's coming back to what you were saying earlier on about the cleverness of certain parties and what they were doing. They all got it. They all knew how to win seats. The question is how to win as many as they could. If you look at kind of the Tories were losing this because they were just losing votes to Labour and losing votes to Reform and to Lib Dems equally across the board. The votes that Boris Johnson got in 2019 were lent to them by Reform. So this is why I did mention the figure for 2019 because he pulled out. Basically, Farage pulled his party out. Well, there were still some representatives in there, but the vast majority got pulled out. So the Tories are already got a rump of those 4 million votes. They'll never vote for them ever again now, as long as Farage is representing them. But what he's cleverly did and what Lib Dems did is focus on the seats that will win them votes. So it doesn't matter about the proportional representation of the parties. It matters about the density of each jurisdiction or a constituency that they win the seats from. And another thing as well, they actually come second less in this election than they did in 2015 reform as well. So they're not quite. So that basically means they're pulling resources from other areas. How we won Clacton and how Tice won the one further north in Clacton is because they focused their efforts in those 1 or 2 seats, or 3 or up to 6 seats now, in the similar way where they looked at the cross-sectional of the population in that area and the type of people that would vote for them in those particular areas, and then just hammered them for years, absolute years, with a similar message. And it obviously went around one thing, which is immigration.
Yeah.
That's how they
Before
did it.
I want to move on to a more broader review of the results in the political landscape, and specifically how it may affect recruitment as well. But just before we do it, be remiss not to really go back to you, Anthony, because after part 1 of this, you had a meeting with your MP, a Doorstepped meeting with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who ended up losing his seat. But, you know, what was that like? What was he like? How did he come across? Because lots of people only see the one view of Rees-Mogg that we all see, you know, on television of a snooty public school educated person that can't relate to Joe Public. But here he was, you know, on your doorstep shaking hands. And what was that like?
Yeah, exactly. So it was slightly weird because, you know, he was just like off the TV to a certain extent. Very, you know, posh old money. A little aloof, like definitely out of touch, I suppose. Although more relatable in my like rich rural neighbourhood, to be fair. But yeah, I had a good chat with him. He was very sincere, like good listener, like was on top of local issues. I found him like patient and polite and like a gentleman basically. So yeah, certainly not going to be slagging him off. The other two might.
He's not really old money though, is he? Was it his grandfather was a lorry driver or something? Apparently, it's all a charge. Yeah, they married into money. I think he's either his great grandmother or his granny.
Oh right, so not that old then. But yeah, he went to Eton, didn't he? His like kids had just come back from boarding there this term, and different world, even though it's only like 3 miles away or something from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many times has he been on your doorstep in the last 14 years?
Yeah, this is the second time. Yeah, so that's right. Yeah, he amped it up because he knew he needed to. He came the day we moved in, actually, basically 14 years ago. But he lost his seat to the guy who had it 14 years ago, actually, Dan Norris from Labour. So that kind of just felt kind of like the right time to hand back the baton in a way. And that he's the Metro Mayor for South West as well. So yeah, Dan Norris is a guy who gets things done by the looks of it. So fair enough.
Let's have a look at the wider political results now and the effect that it may have on the country for years to come. Let's start with you, Bish, and taking the political result aside, let's look at the split of the votes. And do you see that as a healthy situation for the country to be in, that there's lots of different views for different parties? Or do you despair at the fact that there are so many views and essentially Labour have got in on with a landslide in terms of MPs, but with, like we've discussed, 30% of the vote?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because I know we've all spoken about proportional representation offline, and I think that's something that many of us feel would be the fairer and more democratic way of going about it. Now, does that mean that seats will be taken in areas by people I wouldn't really want, that I don't think are particularly democratic or perhaps their moral compass is a little bit off, in my opinion. So I appreciate that that will split the votes in ways that I might not always be happy with. However, to me, that is more democratic. And I feel that even though we had a really low voter turnout, I think it was they reckon it was only about 60% voter turnout, didn't they? Which is one of the lowest on record, which I think in and of itself sort of shows how fed up people just are with politicians in general. I feel, looking at the spread, I do feel that people have almost voted as if we had PR. do you know what I mean? It's like they've kind of gone out and gone, do you know what? I'm really pissed off, and I'm voting how I want to get a message across. I do think that there has been a bit of that, and I do think, I mean, I never thought I would hear these words fall out of my mouth, but the one thing that I agree with, hang on, reform on, is that we need proportional representation. I mean, obviously it would probably or possibly benefit them, but it's I know that the Lib Dems have always been for PR, the Green Party have always been for PR, and it's really been the big two that it only favours them to not have it, but again that smacks of doing what's right for party rather than what's right for the country. And I think we need a real big move in politics to people that are going to do what's right for the country and what's right for party and personal profit, whether it be monetary or politically.
And that's one of Labour's buzz phrases at the minute. It's country before party. And Mark, what are your thoughts on it?
Buzz phrases? It should be part of the fucking job description. Buzz phrase.
You both felt so low that we're like really impressed by that.
So it's
just
a weird
as you're thinking, Mark, we'll just remind everybody about that split. There's a split of the views in this country about the differences and how many parties we've got who actually hold some power within the setup.
Yeah, I did predict this, by the way. 410.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did, didn't you?
Yeah.
He did also predict Nigel Farage being the Tory leader, Mark, if I remember.
Yeah, that's going to be soon. I don't think it's going to
be soon. Yeah.
Don't put a date on that. Just tell us offline so we can get a bet on.
We need to be talking about bets anymore.
I don't want those odds to drop down.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, that was I going to say. I following on from Sarah, what she was just saying then. PR is really important, I think, into the future with this country. There are other alternatives. There's a one called STV, which gives you more of a point rating. But the only thing with stuff like that is that you need to really move the elections to weekends, and you need to make sure that everyone votes. So you've got to force basically everyone to vote so that you have a higher turnout, so you get a better representation of the country, which might stop these massive swings from left to right in every 5-10 years. So it is definitely a direction we should be looking at. But I think we need to steady the ship at the moment. And I think the stability from what Labour's going to give us for the next 5 to 10 years is where we need to be at the moment. And see out what is really going on here in this country, over in America and in Europe. Is there really emergence of a right? As I said earlier on, there's only 4 million voters in the UK that really want that level of politics. What's it like over in America, especially with what's going on with Trump and Biden at the moment? What is really going on generally as a world kind of political system? And also is Russia interfering and China interfering in that political system at the same time? So we've got to really have a real proper conversation around those things. But moving into the future, I think it's going to be what it is right now. It's not going to change for a while. And I said last time, Farage is going to probably be the most vocal person in all this. Admittedly, when he is vocal, it's going to be very quiet in the Houses of Parliament and no one's going to be there when it happens. There's only 5-6 MPs. But what will change? We'll see. But I think if Labour do what they say they're going to do, they can head Farage off at the pass. If they reduce immigration, if they solve all those problems in that area, and have a proper kind of immigration system in the UK, whatever that may look like, I think you're going to see a natural reduction in that kind of right-wing votes, because I think the people that voted reform are not really right-wing. I just think they feel that immigration is an important factor in their world at this moment in time, especially if you live in Clacton, especially live in Kent, these areas which get impacted the most.
And it was such a big vote winner, specifically on that point. And do you agree with Mark there that the reforms increase in popularity could be nipped in the bud severely if they can get hold of that issue?
Yeah, it's the main issue, isn't it? I don't suppose they're a single issue party, but that would kind of deal with it on behalf of reform without them needing to be too involved. as Mark rightly said, the kind of the vote percentage hasn't changed, like on that kind of reform UKIP right, as it's they're just making a lot of noise. It is wrong, I think, philosophically, that it's so against proportional. The makeup of the Commons versus the split of the votes. As I say, with Reform and Conservative having more votes than Labour in total, and the Lib Dems have got a disproportionately large amount. So I'd like to see electoral reform, but on the plus side, like, we are actually going to see and enjoy the best of the first past the post system in terms of the strong mandate. And if it's in safe hands with a stable centrist party, then probably that's a really good idea for the next few years. And let's hope for that kind of boring stable situation that, like Mark kind of alluded to last time.
Yeah. So in summary, we're looking for a political version of a 20-year fixed mortgage.
Oh,
a nice steady rate, no changes, everything's
2% gross all the way up.
Let's finish.
Because the PR parties in Europe are about to be in trouble as they try and cobble together,
Actually, to talk about PR as well, the Netherlands has got PR, and it took them 200 days to form a government. So there is checks and balances we may need to address first.
Nobody noticed, did they? So the country's still there, isn't it?
Yeah.
The country is still there. It hasn't, they haven't fallen. Perhaps we just need no government. That's it. I'm just looking up. There's electoralreform.org has put a lovely little thing. If we had a version of proportional representation, the AMS system. So Labour, with first past the post, as we know, we've got 411 seats. They would have had 236 seats.
Right.
Wow.
And the Tories have got 121 seats currently. They would have had 157. So they'd still be. Wow. So Labour would still very much be the majority, but they would probably, the Lib Dems, they got 72 and they would have 77. So they probably need to be working closely with someone like the Lib Dems and Green Party to be assured of getting stuff through. So,
Yeah. Interesting. Let's move on to, we've run out of time vastly. So for the last section, I just want to move on to you guys' area of expertise in the recruitment industry. Will the result affect recruitment, and what can people within that industry expect over the next 5 years? Mark, you're our resident crystal baller. You start.
Oh no, and the lottery numbers are
offline again with those, please.
Oh right, sorry. Did you all win? Did you all
split it?
Yeah. So there's a big thing happening at the moment in the manufacturing industry, which is about an industrial strategy. We really need to work on this, and if we want to be a competitive manufacturer in the world, we need to sort out our energy. So we've got to look at who is it that's doing it? One of the Miliband's, isn't it? Is the energy secretary now? He's all over TikTok talking about what he's going to do. Green energy, nuclear energy is probably the big focus as well. Small arc reactor energy as well, so small nuclear systems that are going to power towns and cities. The reason, if we can keep our energy cheap, that means manufacturing is cheap. Things like Tata Steel can have then better facilities, maintain jobs, and that's where we're going to get growth from. So it starts with British Energy, and then it trickles down. So that industrial strategy really for the UK is really important. So I'm hearing good things. And I'm hoping we're going to start seeing things moving forward. Feels like the grown-ups are back in power. I don't know.
Anthony, over to you. What's next for the country and what's next for recruitment?
Yeah, I do feel a bit relieved, like Bish was saying. So, and that is telling. Like, I feel like peaceful about the situation. I kind of trust the government to get on and do the job of government, so that's good. In terms of recruitment, we follow closely the economic landscape. So stability followed by growth. That sounds really good. There's not going to be a big shock of trades unions, business, labour. I don't think they're talking about a few tweaks essentially to employment law, which may affect some temporary agencies in terms of single status workers and first day employment rights and things like that, which may make a little bit more cost or bureaucracy on a company, but really it'll sound like
can I just say, sorry, Anthony, on that thing, like changing the rights of people, that's going to make it easier for candidates to move jobs as well. So you're going to see people a bit more confident to move from job to job where they haven't got that 2-year rule over their head. I've been in this company for 10 years. And I'm not going to go there. I have to wait 2 years before I get these kind of worrying rights. So I think it's going to change that landscape, candidate movement, but it's going to make employers more nervous.
Well, to maybe oil the wheels, of the employment market is actually a good thing, So, but the Labour Party's talking to the the key people in business, and they had some fairly high-profile business supporters. So maybe if they can take that over as the party of business, then that ticks another box for them. So and I genuinely wish them all the best. It's Rishi that said, isn't it? It's their success, i.e. Labour, is our success. So let's kind of unite behind the government of the day.
Bish, closing thoughts.
I think just having had the election is going to make things move a bit in recruitment. I don't know about you guys, but we've had a lot of people saying, we're just sort of hanging fire until we see what happens, which I don't really understand, because either you need to hire or you don't, but there we go. I'm really hoping that we do have these manifesto pledges met and worked towards. So Labour set out very clearly 6 first steps, which included economic stability, which is something we really need, launching a new border security command, which we had a very nice one when we were part of the EU, but here we go, cutting NHS waiting lists, setting up Great British Energy, which comes back to what Mark says, energy is going to be a big thing there, cracking down on antisocial behaviour and recruiting 6,500 new teachers. Now, with the economic stability and the green energy agenda, that makes for, as well as the house building, 1.5 million houses they've pledged. So that makes for a lot of new jobs. That makes for a lot of, economic activity options. And they've committed to the working person to, capping taxes or not changing taxes so much. And for small businesses, making it easier. So they've said that, for example, and as Anthony said, we largely are both a barometer and a kind of, reactionary to things that go on in the economic landscape. So they've committed to having only one major fiscal event a year that will be well communicated, well messaged. Under the Conservatives, we had 26 changes in corporation tax. And let alone all the other fiscal events that would be announced that were going to be brought in next week, which is mayhem for business. And I'm sure we've all, as recruiters, had those, you've just spent a week and a half, 2 weeks putting absolutely every living, breathing moment into finding this unicorn for a business, just for them to phone up and go, really sorry, this has just been on the news and we're not doing that anymore. So let's hope that along with the other policies, as Mark said, will help to grease the wheels of people moving around. I think largely the employers that tend to have to worry or do tend to worry are either the people that are actually quite poor employment practices anyway. It's like anything, isn't it? Largely, these rules that you shouldn't have to bring in are brought in to kind of, keep the worst of the bunch in check. But I do think that, small businesses will be worried because it's been put out there like this big ogre of a thing. But very much, if you do go back and read the manifesto, it is very much about supporting particularly smaller business, entrepreneurship. I believe that the British Bank, they're looking at the lending and investments, making it easier to invest, de-risking private investment, as well as having match funding as well. So, and all of this by basically taxing the big boys properly.
Sure. Fascinating. And thank you so much, everybody. We've come to an end now. 3 owners of 3 fantastic companies joining us today, and we appreciate your time giving it up for us today. Thanks so much for watching us. Bish, while you're on, tell people where they can get hold of you if they need to.
Either at recruitment.co.uk or probably just there actually, or on LinkedIn, although I'm a bit rubbish on LinkedIn, she says, on a LinkedIn Live.
Okay, Mark, where can people get hold of you and your business?
Unlike the Tory party via seance, you can get hold of me on LinkedIn. And also thomaslecruitment.co.uk. And if you think hard enough, I might appear in front of you.
Interesting. We'll give that a go. Anthony McCormack, his businesses is Macstaff, and you can get hold of Macstaff and find out a little bit more about them on the website. If you're watching us on YouTube today and you've not subscribed, please do so. There's a whole host of videos on there about recruitment, and part 1 of this is also on there. If you wanted to check out thoughts and predictions before the event, then have a look on there and see how you get on. That just leaves me, Martin Crowson, say thanks a lot for joining us again here on Macstaff Lives. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. Maybe we'll have a part 3, which might focus on Sarah's idea of no government next. Who knows? We'll be discussing that one off air.
Anarchy!
As we head into anarchy, I'm off heading in towards Mark's lottery numbers. So we'll catch you soon.
6, 8.
Here on Macstaff Live. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.